10e, factoring when a is equal to 1. So let's look at the notes right here. It says quadratic equations. So remember when we were doing double distribution, the answers we were getting were all in the form of a quadratic equation. And the form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. So today, when I'm talking about factoring when a is equal to 1, this value a, so this coefficient, let me change my color. This coefficient right here is always going to be 1. And you'll notice that on the examples here. So this a, b, and c are all the coefficients either in front of x or that number that's by itself. So a, b, and c. So these are the steps to factor by grouping. That's how we're going to be factoring these quadratic equations. So our first step is to multiply a times c and find the factor that adds to b. So we're going to do this by creating a table, and you'll see that more in example 1. Then we're going to group them, so put them in parentheses. And then lastly, we're going to factor out a GCF, so the thing that you learned last week with the sub. Okay, so let's look at example 1. Okay, so our first step, like I mentioned above, is to label our A, B, and C. So label A, B, and C. So A, remember, is the number in front, and in this case, A is always going to be 1. So A is 1. Our B is 6, and our C is 5. So what we need to do is create a table and multiply A times C. So A times C is 5 because 1 times 5 is 5. And then we label our B, which is 6. So I put our A times C over here and then B on the other side. So A times C equals, and then B equals. Okay. In the left column, so that first column, now we're going to find all the numbers that multiply to 5. So 1 times 5 multiplies to 5, and negative 1 times negative 5 multiplies to 5. Because remember, a negative times a negative is a positive. So those are our two factors, our two numbers that multiply to 5. Now we're going to add them across. So if I add them across, 1 plus 5 equals 6, and negative 1 plus negative 5 equals negative 6. So we need to find the pair that gives us the same value as B. And the pair that did that is this one right here. 1 times 5, when we add them, gives us 6. Okay, so that's our first step. We created our table. Our next step is to group them. So what I mean by grouping them, instead of writing 6x like we have here, we're going to split 6x apart and make it 1x plus 5x. So we have x squared plus 1x plus 5x plus 5. Notice I took this part right here, this 6x, and instead I made it this. I made it 1x plus 5x. I split it apart. Okay, so then I'm going to group them into two sets of parentheses. So the first two terms went in my first parentheses, the second two terms went in my second parentheses. And then I'm going to factor out a GCF from each one. So remember, GCF stands for greatest common factor. And what that means is we're going to take out from each set of parentheses what they have in common. The biggest number we can take out from both, or the biggest variable we can take out from both. So we have x squared plus 1x. So they both have x's, and that smallest x is what we can take out, so x. X squared divided by x is x. 1x divided by x is 1. Okay, now let's find the GCF of 5x plus 5. They both don't have x's, so that means we can't factor out a variable, but they both have 5s. So I'm going to take out a positive 5, and so then I divide. 5x divided by 5 is x. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So after I factor out my GCF, what's most important here is that my parentheses here match. So x plus 1 matches with x plus 1. So since they match, I can now write my answer. X plus 1, which is from those parentheses, and then my outside numbers, x plus 5. X plus 5. So that's my answer. As you keep working through the problems, you'll notice that they'll get easier and easier, I promise. Okay, so let's look at number 2. Okay, remember our first step is to label our A, B, and C. So A, B, and C. A is 1, since we don't see a number there. B is 9. And C is 14. Now we create a table. A times C is equal to 1 times 14, which is 14, and B is equal to 9. So now we need all the numbers that multiply to 14. So 1 times 14, 2 times 7, negative 1 times negative 14, and negative 2 times negative 7. Remember, we have to include the negatives in there because a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, so now let's add it across. 1 plus 14 is 15. 2 plus 7 is 9. Negative 1 plus negative 14 is negative 15. Negative 2 plus negative 7 is negative 9. So the only one that matches our B of 9 is this one right here, 2 and 7. So that means we need to take our 9p and split it into 2p and 7p. So p squared plus 2p plus 7p plus 14. Remember, I'm finding these numbers right here. I am finding them from our table. The 2 and the 7 are from this 2 and 7 right here. Okay? Then I group them, so put parentheses around them. And then I start factoring out my GCF. So p squared and 2p, they have a p in common. P squared divided by p is p. 2p divided by p is 2. 7p and 14, they have a 7 in common, so plus 7. 7p divided by 7 is p. 14 divided by 7 is 2. Notice my parentheses match. That means I did something correct. So my answer is p plus 2, and then my outsides, p plus 7. Okay. Let's look at the last example. Remember, I'm going to label my A, B, and C. So A, B, and C. My A right here, I don't see anything, so it's 1. My B is 2. And my C is negative 24. Notice I'm taking the sign before each number. That's very important. Okay, let's create my table. A times C is equal to 1 times negative 24, which is negative 24. And B is equal to 2. So I need to find all the numbers that multiply to negative 24. So I have 1 times negative 24. I have 2 times negative 12. I have 3 times negative 8. 4 times negative 6. And then I can switch the negatives. So negative 1 times 24. Negative 2 times 12. Negative 3 times negative 8. Negative 4 times, oh sorry, not negative 8. Times 6. Okay. Those are all the numbers that multiply to negative 24. So now I add them. 1 plus negative 24 is negative 23. 2 plus negative 12 is negative 10. 3 plus negative 8 is negative 5. 4 plus negative 6 is negative 2. Negative 1 plus 24 is 23. Negative 2 plus 12 is 10. Negative 3 plus 8 is 5. And negative 4 plus 6 is 2. So remember, we're finding the one that matches our b value, and the only one that matches our b value is this last one, negative 4 and 6. Okay, so now I'm going to split up my answer. So I have x squared minus 4x plus 6x minus 24. And then I group them. And then I take out the GCF. So x squared minus 4x, they have an x in common. So x squared divided by x is x. Negative 4x divided by x is negative 4. 6x and negative 24 have a 6 in common, so plus 6. 6x divided by 6 is x. Negative 24 divided by 6 is negative 4. My parentheses match, so that means I have my answer, x minus 4, and then the outside's x plus 6. Okay. So that's the answer. What you'll notice is as we're working out these problems that this is the opposite of double distribution. So we start with the answer and we work back to the original problem. So it's the opposite of double distribution. I just want you guys to make that connection.